You've been charged with a serious crime that you insist you didn't commit. You're innocent until proven guilty, of course, but that court date might take a while to arrive. In the meantime, your place of residence will be what's called the Miami Mega Jail. You're still young, you've never been to jail before, and you're not a tough guy. So when you're taken to the floor where you'll be housed, you can't believe what you see. Rows of cells filled with scores of men, shouting, screaming, coming up to the bars and threatening you. It's utter chaos. Waiting for you in your cell is a welcoming committee of 20 angry-looking, dangerous men. You're no match for these guys, but you're gonna have to fight. Make no mistake about that. You've just entered an arena of mortal combat. It's hard to pick which is the worst county jail in the USA because sadly there are multiple places which could compete to be the top, or perhaps we should say the bottom of the list. Anyone who's had to stay at the place we're going to talk about today won't be offended we've chosen it as the worst, that's for sure. We should say though that if you speak to hardened criminals who've been in and out of jail and prisons, they'll often tell you that jail is much worse. Many people say jail is dirtier than prison and much more violent. The place we're talking about today has been called Hell in Paradise, and after our research, we won't disagree. What we're actually talking about is called the Miami-Dade Corrections and Rehabilitation Department, which actually consists of several units including a notorious boot camp. Those who don't get through that camp will end up in jail, and some of them are still in their teens. The boot camp is another story altogether, but we'll say compared to jail, it's a holiday camp. The entire system houses around 7,000 people, although something like 114,000 folks will pass through the doors each year. That's about 312 a day. This is a busy place, that's for sure. Still, it's only the 7th largest jail system in the United States. Most inmates won't spend long in there, and the average time spent in the entire system is just 22 days. But you'll also find people who've been waiting trial for as long as 5 years. This brings us to one of the main units, the one place that hits the headlines the most for its brutal conditions. This is called the Pre-Trial Detention Center, or is sometimes referred to as the main jail. It usually houses around 1,700 people at a time. Most of the people there are still technically innocent since they haven't been proven guilty, but waiting for that court date might take years. It's not easy to settle when in this kind of limbo, and if you walk past the cells on some floors, you'll see just how unsettled things are. There are prisoners who have quit even fighting their cases because they just want to get out of there, innocent or not. They just want to get to prison. The worst floors are where the alleged most dangerous offenders are kept, and those are floors 5 and 6. Cells here usually house anywhere from 15 to 25 men, and within this group, there's a kind of hierarchy. As the guys in there like to say a lot, it's survival of the fittest. So if you're not a fighter, you might have a hard time. You want a certain bunk, you'll have to fight for it. Okay, you don't care about having the worst spot in the cell, but what if someone just takes your stuff? As one prisoner in there said, I exploit the weak. If you don't fight for your things, you'll have a hell of a time, and we mean that in the negative. If you snitch, you'll be beaten wherever you go, unless you get put into protection. As another prisoner said in an interview, on your first day in his cell, you have to fight simply because they want to check you out as a man. But why? His reply was, if you don't fight, then it's a sign that something's wrong with you. Maybe you're a snitch because you didn't want to fight. It sounds unreasonable, but the prisoner said those are the rules, that's the code. The thing is, the prisoners can never clearly explain the rules of the code. One guy did explain that if a person doesn't fight one-on-one, then in adherence to the code, the whole cell might beat the person. Sometimes a guy might be beaten for the smallest infraction, and sometimes he might have been accused of something he didn't actually do. Who stole my food? No one replies, and the weakest takes the beating. You're powerless, you take the blame. He had to do it because he'd lose face if he didn't. As everyone says in there, you just have to fight back. They have a lot of unwritten principles they embrace, and one is called GABOS. That means game ain't based on sympathy. Unlike some federal prisons, it's unlikely you'll be taken under anyone's wing. Jail is way more gladiatorial than prison, even though we hear less about the brutality of jail systems. Just go into forums where former prisoners talk about their experience in the correction system, and you'll find many of them saying jail was way worse. The irony, of course, is that most people haven't even been found guilty yet, and they're treated worse and face more threats. First-timers are absolutely terrified, and in many cases, they should be. The mentally unwell get loaded in there. The food is terrible, the cells are filthy, and they'll spend most of their time in that cell. You'll find many prisoners saying they'll do a bullet just to get out of that hellhole. A bullet is a year in prison. Why would jails be home to worse conditions, you might be wondering? Well, they're not really meant to keep a person too long. The problem is, even a short stint can be hellish, and some folks do much more than a short stay if their trial is delayed. Prison is supposed to offer some kind of comfort. Prison is hell with benefits. Jail is feeling constant pain and purgatory, and the worst part is you don't know the way out. Because of that, inmates are often mean and angry and frustrated, and sometimes just plain crazy after coming off an 18-month-long crankathon. All that said, imagine being sent to the worst of these places. Let's get back to you being taken up to the 6th floor in Miami. Once in a cell, the guard walks off, and those guards have admitted that they can't respond to violence fast enough to stop it. They admit they leave the inmates to their codes. Those guards openly say that there's nothing they can do about the severe beatings, the stabbings, the theft. There just aren't enough of them to be everywhere and see everything. Once that guard walks away, you are left to battle it out on the 5th and 6th floors of this ugly old brown building. But why? Why can't they just get along? One prisoner answered that saying, "The code is the code." What does that mean? It means if you are seen to have disrespected someone, you fight, you strap up. You don't reason with a person because that's not a reasonable place to begin with. People not from the streets, they say, don't understand the code of the streets. This kind of Wild West attitude goes back to what scientists have called a culture of honor. You dishonor a guy, you fight, you draw swords, you take 10 paces and shoot. In the outside world, we've evolved out of this for the most part, but inside prison, this code, this culture of honor, still pervades. On top of theft and fighting, the main jail in Miami has been called one of the worst in America for other kinds of male-on-male abuse. Terrible things can happen when guards only patrol the cells once an hour. Weaker inmates are just left like prey among apex predators. Thankfully, the jail has made a lot of improvements in the last few years, one being a lot more cameras have been installed. Then there's the issue of this jail housing many people who are taking psychiatric drugs. Inmate fights often break out when a mentally ill person is acting in a way that other inmates don't like. As the Marshall Project reported, Miami's jail system is the largest institution for mentally ill people in Florida. Mentally ill people often become the prey and end up on the floor with 20 men taking turns to pummel them. This is how withdrawal is treated. On any given day, men walk in and out of the infirmary. It's like a revolving door splattered with blood. In fact, there's been so much violence that the Department of Justice said the Miami-Dade jail system was way out of control, and prisoners as well as guards faced too many dangers. Something had to be done, said the department. A few years back, the jail faced a lot of scrutiny after 8 people died in just 5 months. The DOJ said the 3 deaths of mentally unwell people was particularly disturbing. One guy, who was in for driving while suspended, went in on a Saturday and was dead the next Monday. 2 more died within a week, with the commissioner saying the system is extremely broken. It turned out that from the 8 that died, 1 had jumped off a landing to escape prisoners that were coming after him to beat him. Knives were also mentioned. The worst floor, that has since closed down, was sometimes called the Forgotten Floor. It was the 9th level, where most of the mentally ill people were kept. This was where prisoners were often left and neglected, and in too many cases took their own lives. Back in the day on this level, prisoners slept on the floor without blankets, although as a psychiatric facility it was supposed to be humane. Some prisoners were found to be drinking from toilets, and when this hit the news, the place was called horrific. There was public outcry, but as you've heard, there are still problems when someone with mental issues gets locked up with modern-day street gladiators and bullies whose code willfully lacks humane values. Not all the floors are as bad as the stories we've talked about, and in some cases particularly dangerous or vulnerable people will be housed alone. Nonetheless, end up on one of those high floors in the main jail and you will certainly see what it's like to be confined in one of the toughest jails in the world. There are other problems too, of a more unusual ilk. In 2019, 17 people were rushed to the hospital from this place due to some sudden illness. Several staff came down with it too. What happened? No one really knew. The bomb squad was even called in after a strange liquid was found, but that turned out to be harmless. The most likely reason people just started keeling over was smoke fumes from some toxic drug. If inhaling smoke fumes from a distance can bring a person down with a vicious nausea, what on earth could they have been smoking in there? Nerve gas? It just shows how crazy that place is. We'll leave you with a review we found on a Facebook page dedicated to this jail. Welcome to hell. A person would be better off dead rather than enduring the abuse and torment of being incarcerated in this filthy, disgusting sewer. You don't want to get sent to Miami jail, but you do want to click on one of these 2 videos. Go watch this video now for another great video from the Infographics show, or this one right over here. You can only choose one though, so pick and go watch another video right now.